I'm Realtor Deb Tomorrow, and this is At Home in Bloomington, brought to you by Karen Russell, Ruoff Home Mortgage. We profile the people, places, and resources that make Bloomington, Bloomington, and help you live your best life. At Home in Bloomington. Hello, and welcome to At Home in Bloomington. I'm Realtor Deb Tomorrow, your host, joined as always by the lovely Miss Karen Russell, best damn lender in the state of Indiana.
Hey, Deb.
Hello, how are you?
It's been a really hectic couple of days.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's fall. Well, when we're recording this, my mother called me this morning, and I was trying to explain to her, like, she goes, well, how can I listen to the old shows? And I'm like, athomeinbloomington.com, Mom. They're all there. They're all like, even the old ones? I'm like, yes, even episode 1 through 40 whatever.
Your mom's so sweet.
They're all there. And then my dad was like, how do I listen to a podcast? And I was like, oh, I don't have time for that right now. So, Mom, I said just go to the website and click. It's the easiest thing. They just told me this morning they're planning a 17-day Hawaiian cruise, which is crazy because they don't like cruising like I do. And so I'm taking it back. And so I was like, I felt like maybe that's why they were asking. It takes 5 days to get from San Diego to the Hawaii, and so they're going to kill each other. But anyways, hope they're not listening to this episode. Have fun. Okay. We're going to show our age on this show.
Okay.
And get a little nostalgic.
Well, we should because,
yeah. We're going to talk about that. Okay, so do you remember, you and I came to Bloomington just like a year or two apart, I think. I came
Probably
in 90.
Early 90. Yeah. I got here in 92.
And do you remember what technology was like when you came to Bloomington?
I can tell you email was not a thing, which sounds wild.
Yep.
But no, we learned keyboarding in high school. So,
but I only used a computer once in college.
I did too, but it was like a computer programming class.
Oh, no. I mean, like literally one time only. That's an inside joke. I went to a computer lab once to type a paper because I had a word processor thing, big thing that I would type my papers on and then hit print, and it would print like a typewriter kind of thing. But I never used a computer. Of course, I had liberal arts, French, and anthropology, but...
Towards my end at IU, we were introduced to email and the internet and some of the search engines. I don't think Google was on that top of that list like it might be now. So
no, and I know I took a year off between college and grad school, and in that time period, email came around. So when I started grad school, which was like 95, I think, then there was email a little bit, but we didn't use it that much. Like I would go over to the school on weekends and check my email.
Yeah.
They had public computers around.
Right. I didn't have one when I was in the dorm or in my the first couple of years. I think it was. You
hear that, kids?
Yeah. I think it was my final, my senior year where it was and then, Jonathan, my son was born, so I was like, I need to have this at my house.
Yeah, right,
so,
because you can't go outside.
Yeah, so...
Well, to that end, I mean, I guess in addition to that, I didn't have a TV in my dorm room my first year. No cell phones or anything like that. If you want to watch a show, you got your friends together and you go down to a lounge or whatever and you watch 90210.
Whatever,
we did last night.
There's one TV in the lounge.
Right. I even lived a year I had a TV. But no cable. So I only got one channel.
Okay.
Which was WTIU. And it's a good thing because the dial on the TV was broken. So we had a fork that we would stick in it if we needed to change it from WTIU to channel.
Earmuffs, kids. Don't do that.
Because we had a VCR. But I watched a lot of Sesame Street and McNeil Report that year. Okay. But also in that same time frame, one of the most popular movies was Wayne's World.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you
not seen Wayne's World?
No, not all the way through. Lord. I know the classic part where they're in the car and they sing the song, but that's about the extent.
Well, the gist of that movie was that these guys had a public access TV show.
Okay, in their basement.
Yeah, yes, right. And it sort of resonates with me because one of the things we did watch in college was...
I don't know why we're hesitating.
I don't know, because you look like you're going to say something.
I remember, and I don't know what channel it was on. I don't know if it was at the university level or if it was the county level, but there used to be a show that college students watched all the time called J&B on the Rocks.
There you go. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
This is not J or B, though, so we're not getting there.
I know. This is
a very long-winded introduction,
so anyway.
But like I said, I was sitting down this morning and got really sentimental about it.
I knew.
J&B on the Rocks was on what was called BCATs, which was our local public access.
Right.
Right? So that's who we're talking to today. But it's not called BCATs anymore, and I want to find out why.
Okay.
I keep calling it BCATs, and then I'm thinking it's not. It's called CATS. And so we welcome Michael White, who's a general manager of CATS. Did I butcher that at all, or did I get it about right?
No, that was actually really good.
Okay.
And thank you for having me.
So I did find out, I have to interject this fun fact, because I think that, when we watch J&B on the Rocks, okay, so for kids who don't know, J&B on the Rocks was just a local, these two guys, it was supposed to be like a cooking show, but drinks, but it was much more than that. And it actually morphed into something even much larger than you and I probably
I don't know what happened
realized.
after that, but
a lot happened. But did you know how it started?
I have no idea.
I did not know this until I Wikipedia'd it this morning. Was it Bart? Bart got busted for streaking across campus. Bart is the B in J&B.
Okay.
And was sentenced to like some community service, which he did at BCATS.
Okay.
And in that process...
Yeah, and by the way, when he was arrested by a female officer who handcuffed his hands behind him.
Excellent.
So he was totally exposed.
Totally. Brilliant. Yes, well deserved.
So he came to us to do public restitution.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how the sort of genesis of this show.
He learned the ropes and got inspired and started doing the show.
Lesson
and in
learned.
fact, at some point in time, there's a magazine, probably a website now, but back then in the 90s, it was a magazine called Wired that named it like one of the best TV shows in the country.
I think they said it was the coolest show on TV.
Yeah. And so they started, at that time you would take videotapes and you would send them to other stations. So they were actually sending tapes to other stations.
Okay.
And I think they've sort of slightly resurrected it, or they've recently still done some episodes, even though, 20, 30 years have passed.
Well, that's great that your organization was an option for him to fulfill, his community service.
Yeah. I don't know if you still do that or not, but,
We do. And Bart has gone on, I believe he's down in Louisiana.
In New Orleans. Somebody's in Montana, I think.
Yeah, Joe's in
Montana, Barson,
I think Bart teaches like media studies or something now.
Awesome.
So he turned it into a career.
Yeah.
And it's happened for actually many folks that have kind of gotten their start in public access here.
Yeah.
My twin brother, for instance, he went on, we got our first start, we got our first hands-on equipment here in town, and he later went on to write most of the Barney the Dinosaur shows.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Is he crazy now? Because that would probably drive people crazy. Well, we like to think of ourselves as, instead of J&B on the Rocks, we're K&D on the Rocks.
Sure.
Or, over a warm red whatever.
Malbec.
There you go.
Okay.
So I think their website, I think it's just rox.com.
Yeah, now it's just Rocks. But
they've been offered a lot of money just to get the website.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but it's always going to be J&B on the Rocks to us. So
I just remember people scheduling their time. It was kind of like coming together for that must-see TV, like that happened later on, but at the local level.
It was like Seinfeld, 90210, and J&B on the Rocks. All right, well, let's talk about CATS and what, how it got started, because it's actually been around a really long time, and I think people kind of know it's there, but I want people to have more deliberate knowledge about it.
Oh, sure. Well, it was formed, a dollar changed hands between the then cable operator and the library in December of 1973. And since that time, the cable operator then gave the library a wire, and there was one channel. And then that channel, shortly after I began in 1985, that channel expanded to 2, and then it went to 3. And then currently now, we have 5, and WTIU has 1.
Okay.
And these are the channels actually somewhat owned under the stewardship of the city of Bloomington through a much earlier what's called a franchise agreement. So the city has 6 of these community channels. And so the library is a steward of 5, and then WTIU is a steward of 1.
So are you funded by the city?
We are funded. Now, this sort of gets to your earlier point about the name and perhaps why the name changed. So when I started, we were funded. We were housed in the library, but virtually all our money at the time came from the city, so we called it Bloomington Community Access Television. However, then the county, I was able to convince the county that maybe you'd like your meetings covered as well, and later the town of Ellettsville. So briefly, we were BCAT, and then MCAT, because we were getting money from Monroe County, but that was just too confusing to people. So then we decided, okay, we're going to lose the M and the B and just go for CATS, Community Access Television Services.
Okay.
Because the town of Ellettsville began contributing funding, and we started covering their meetings as of, I think that was 2009.
Okay. And am I understanding correctly that you also get funding from Comcast or Xfinity or whatever the heck they're called now?
Well, I'd say indirectly.
Or is governmental through a tax kind of thing?
Here's how it works. Basically, on all of the streets here in Bloomington and everywhere in America, there's what are called public rights of way.
Okay.
And businesses like cable operators, which are now called VSPs, which stands for Video Service Providers, because they run their lines in those public rights of way by federal law, specifically the Cable Act of 1984.
I love compliance.
Anyway, so because those lines are run through those public rights of way, they're basically local cities, towns, counties get 5% of whatever that cable operator makes.
Okay.
Running it, absent anything coming out of modem, and that's probably a dangerous thing for access off in the future, but that's a much more complicated story. So anyway, so 5% comes back to the cities and towns and counties. In Indiana, it goes through the Indiana Utilities Regulatory Commission and then back to, let's say, City of Bloomington, Monroe County, and the town of Ellettsville, who are our three external government funding partners. And I have to mention the public library, because without the public library, we would not be there at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're an amazing resource. Okay, so that's interesting to me. We did a tour a couple weeks ago, last week, maybe it was last week. It's all blending together now, of the facility. So we got to see all the production studios, and Adam gave us that tour. Stillwell, right? Is that his last name? Yeah. Adam Stillwell. And
he regrets that he could not be present today.
Yeah, he had a lot of great information. You could tell that he really liked what he did. And I was like, I just see a lot of screens and buttons. And I was like, did you just come in here and pretend to push buttons like you know what you're doing? And I wanted to play like Apollo 13, and start pushing buttons. But then I thought that wasn't a good idea. But he was telling me, and this was an aha moment for me, being, again, non-techie. There are literally like wires running like from the CAT facility to like a hub. That, you know what I'm saying? Like, I always thought it was all like wireless.
The hub?
Well, it's like in the old AT&T building, right? It's between 6th and 7th and Washington and Walnut.
Truth is, I've not been to the hub, but there's what they call the city's telecom hotel, and there's racks there. And then, of course, we have our main engineering room at the library. Excuse me. And then from the library, it goes to the city's telecom hotel. And then from there, it goes to Smithfield Digital, AT&T, and then Comcast.
But, like, I don't know. That was just a fun fact that, to me, I was like, really? There's, like, actual wires, not just it's all like in the air, in the ether, or whatever.
You're non-broadcast. So broadcast things like, let's say, WTIU, broadcast is defined as having a uniquely pervasive presence, meaning you can turn it on. If you had an old sort of television in your car, some folks did. My dad did.
In his car.
Yeah. And anyway, so broadcast television, because of the way it's being transmitted, is described as having a uniquely pervasive presence. But then cable television, it's going down that cable. But it's also why the constitutional protections for what's called public educational governmental access, PEG access, have the same constitutional breadth of things like HBO and things like that, which is why shows like the JMB on the Rocks were able to get away with everything they got away with.
Push the envelope.
Yeah, a lot. And we can talk more about that if you want.
Yeah, I know. I definitely want to
tease that for part 2.
I definitely want to have. I have on my list of questions sort of a discussion about free speech, because I do think that that's something that's interesting that I want to talk about. So let me look at my list. So let's talk real quick about the 5 channels that you have. So the first one is the library channel.
Right, and that features meetings, not meetings so much, but events that CATS covers that are non-governmental. And so, we produce I think last year it was 370 community events. So we go to Rotary meetings, and we cover things like the Lotus Festival and the IU Soul Review and lectures in the library. and 4th of July parades and all that kind of stuff.
You're missing one really important one. When I went in for the tour with Adam, he said, well, we cover things like Dancing with the Celebrities. And I said, I was in that in 2011. Okay. And then I said, I had a CD of that, and I gave it to another contestant, and she never gave it back to me. And he grabs over this form. He goes, fill this out. I'll get you a copy.
Oh, my gosh.
We have the vault. We have 40,000 local programs back there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I printed out just for fun, like this is today's schedule, or part of today's schedule on the library channel. There's a Girls Rock Bloomington Camp Showcase. There's an Active Aging Coalition meeting. This one looked really interesting to me. History of the Near West Side with Duncan Campbell and Cynthia Brubaker. And Duncan Campbell's amazing.
Yeah, he is.
If you ever get a chance to listen to him talk, he's awesome. The Bloomington Rotary Club luncheon, something with NASA. The Bloomington Chef's Challenge, which would be fun. That's like, what's the show with the cooking and the a la cuisine? You know that one? You don't watch the food
I
now,
know,
right?
but it's like Top Chef or Master something. Yeah.
Listeners know what it is. And then there's a college audition preparation faculty concert. So a lot of the IU School of Music things are broadcast on that. And then there's some Lotus stuff that's going to be broadcast tonight too. So there's always something interesting going on there. So that's the library channel. Then you've got the things that we kind of know about, the Bloomington County City Government Channel and the Monroe County Government Channel. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more after the break. And then one of my favorites, which is SCOLA, which I guess I didn't really realize was something going through CAT, and that's the international news.
I know, I have
you
that.
Ever watched that?
I have.
And you go, do I understand that? Do you watch the Korean and like?
I would stop and go, okay, I know some of the words. Yeah. So when my mom would be visiting, but anyways, I'm digressing. I never knew it went through CATS either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've been carrying SCOLA since 1992, and we were able to get a dish still there on top of the library that picks that up. It features news from 60 countries around the world. And there's a thing called a satellite farm in McClellan, Iowa. And so they've got all these dishes, and then they feed it then to access centers.
But they're not subtitled, right? Because I kind of I'd be interested to see what
I think some of them are.
The news is. I'll have to flip around. And
but if you're working on language, it's a really good way
right? That's what I was thinking, because I have a French degree that is
this something that, and I mean, is it unique to Bloomington and Monroe County, or do other communities also utilize their
funding
to do something like this? Because, I think as the university, having 60 countries and their news and everything being able to come through is definitely probably appealing for a lot of the students and faculty. But I'm just wondering, if I went to my hometown of Indiana, right, are they utilizing, resources like this?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, no offense to what your hometown might be, but
none taken.
Even in places like Indianapolis, the fees, as an example, I'm not sure if that's the way it currently is, but these franchise fees I was talking about for use of public rights of way, rather than having what we call public access, or if you'd like to come in and make your own show, they were taking that money and giving it to the Pacers, which is a private corporation, which to me seems kind of an egregious misuse of public funds. But, I'm not the basketball fan some folks might be.
Interesting.
But anyway, so most little towns, these franchise fees, they just roll those into the general fund, and then they just don't have time to have these local channels. So this is not a big town. Bloomington's not a big town. So I think we're very fortunate to have such kind of a comprehensive network. By the way, we're first in the country to have an internet presence back in 1999, where we were doing our meetings live and also archived, so people could watch and listen to them. So
awesome.
We did that in conjunction with what was the company? It was a thing called Hoosier Net.
Okay.
Which some of you out there might recall. Anyway, so all of those meetings still exist in digital form as well, but then we also, in our deep deep storage. We have them all on tapes as well.
So do you attribute in 1973 just the fact, is the university presence the reason that we were able to kind of go this route instead of just rolling the money over into coffers? Because we had, students and probably faculty and support and people graduating with a TV and radio degree and needed something to do.
I think it was more the notion of there was the Cable Act of 1972, which sort of allowed for the presence of these. And the basic premise of that was that cable systems were closed communities. And as such, they could be excluding certain viewpoints from people that didn't have the money to get on television. And so in 1972, the federal government established the Cable Act of 1972, which then allowed for individuals to have access to these formerly closed systems.
Interesting. Yeah. That makes us sound really progressive for 1972.
Well, I think it was Charlotte Zietlow that brought it in front of the city council back in 73, and so the council voted. And I think they put a little bit of money forward at the time, not very much. Then the library put a little bit,
Yeah.
And when I started in 85, it was basically home VCRs.
Yeah.
And nothing was, it was basically like somebody had tried to create it in their basement. Nothing was being done properly technically.
Yeah.
And so I had come from a career, I had worked in commercial television here, at Channel 4, which no longer exists here in town. So I'd had what I thought was a career of 10 years there. And then I brought over, seeing what they had when I started in 85, I brought over one of the Channel 4 engineers, a really nice guy by the name of Charlie Sears. And then so we started being able to put what's called synced video onto the system, such that whenever you would turn to the channel, your TV wouldn't go wonky, which it did previous to that.
Awesome. All right, interesting. Well, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the government, the Bloomington City government and Roanoke County government programming that you have, as well as a little bit of a conversation on free speech. So should be interesting. So stick around. You're at home in Bloomington.
Hi, this is Karen Rastel with Ruoff Home Mortgage. Did you know that you can often save money by purchasing your own house instead of paying rent? There are a lot of perks in owning a home of your own. So contact me today at 812-606-7653 so I can help you invest your hard-earned money for yourself instead of your landlord. Ruoff Home Mortgage is an Indiana corporation licensed by the Indiana Department of Financial Institutions. This is not an offer for extension of credit or a commitment to lend. All loans must satisfy company underwriting guidelines. Equal housing lender. NMLS number 141868.
This is your Real Estate Realist. Real advice on buying and selling real estate based on my experience closing over 800 home sales. Zillow makes it look so easy with their stinking estimates. Don't get me started. Zillow takes public data and pops it into a spreadsheet and spits out your home value. But determining the value of your home is not that easy. So here are 3 things to consider. Number 1, the true definition of value is when a buyer is willing to pay what a seller is willing to accept. There are 2 players in that, the buyer and the seller, and an agreement. When pricing your home to sell, there isn't a buyer yet, and there isn't an agreement yet. So you don't establish true value as much as you establish an estimated value as a starting point. Number 2, value cannot be mathematically calculated on a spreadsheet. That's because every person values everything differently. Some people may place a large value on a fenced yard because they have a dog. Others may not care about that as much, so it has less value. The value one person places on anything is highly subjective, and Zillow values don't take that into consideration. And number 3, value also depends on who is seeking the value and why. An insurance agent's value of a property may be different than an appraiser's or a seller's. I've seen 2 appraisals on the same property done 6 weeks apart be different by $40,000. One was for a home equity line of credit and one was for a buyer. This is not to say that one appraiser was wrong and one appraiser was right. It's just to prove that value is a moving target defined by the players involved, the reasons for the valuation, and the time of year, and a million other reasons. So what's a homeowner to do? A trusted realtor with experience in the market can give you a solid price range for your home and work with you to determine your goals and how to price your home accordingly. Call me and I can help. For more information on understanding your home's worth, check out my Real Estate Today podcast, episode 39. You can find it on my website, YouTube channel, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast sites.
My name is Brittany, and Deb Tomorrow is my realtor. She helped me buy my first home. I enjoyed working with Deb because she was patient, thorough, and made the experience fun. Deb should be your realtor too. And now, back to the show.
Hello and welcome back to At Home in Bloomington. I'm sorry you weren't with us during break because we always have such interesting conversations that are completely off the record, although I really do think we should have like a break time basement edition. Our guest suggested we call it not at our home, not at my house, not at my home, or something like that, instead of At Home in Bloomington. Anyways, before we get back, I do want to do a little bit of a throwback. This is to episode 20 of At Home in Bloomington, and that is when we spoke with Matt Neer and Erica Brown of the Monroe County Public Library, and they told us about so many programs and services, but we really didn't talk about cats at that point. So I'm glad we were able to have this sort of separate, dedicated show, but I just want to remind people to make sure they're following them on Facebook. That's a great way to find out all the activities. They have, come pet puppies and I think do things with goats. That sounds really bad. Also remember you can
pet goats.
There you go. Pet goats. There you go. Check out toys and electronics. Remember you can get if you're going somewhere where there's not Wi-Fi, you can check out a hotspot that you can take with you.
I forgot about
There's
that.
There's crazy stuff that you can get at the library. It's insane. So anyways, check that out. But one of the crazy things you can get at the library are all the resources that CATS provides. So let's talk about the government channels, because I think that's the one thing that we do know. Flipping through channels, you kind of run across it's another government meeting. But that's something that, do you cover all the government meetings?
We don't. There are certain specified government meetings in our contracts. We do these annual funding contracts with the city, the county, the town of Ellettsville, and they specify those meetings. Then we cover a bunch of other ones as well because, for instance, this farmers market thing that popped up, that was not a meeting we normally cover, but because it was so important, they asked that we cover it. We said, sure. It's a matter of finding equipment and crews. And in that case, we were able to get that together.
There's in one of your, it's like a war room. It's like a meeting room, but they've got a big whiteboard that sort of says, here are all the upcoming government meetings. And there's a lot on that board. How many a week do you think? What was that? I can tell you in 2018, we did 535 government meetings. So that's almost 2 a day during the week.
Sometimes it's 6 a day. It just depends. Tuesdays and Thursdays are really bad. Yeah. And everybody wants their meetings on those days for some reason. And so we're just, it's difficult to cover. Yeah. And you're constantly trying to staff I hope I'm not telling secrets, but when I walked in, I was like, and do you guys play bingo in here? Because there was this little round cage that you would spin balls in for bingo. And so he was talking about all the important things they do in this room. And I'm like, and you play bingo? And he said, no, that's how we draw names sometimes for who's covering what meeting. Right. Because there's some meetings that, they're shorter. Yeah. And some meetings are very long. And so it's just and unpredictable. It's a fair way to allocate responsibilities to the various production systems that we use. One thing I would want to mention up front when talking about governmental meetings, and I think it's really important, and that is having the public library as the sort of umbrella over CATS, Community Access Television Services. I think that confers a kind of neutrality of coverage that, around the country, sometimes cities and towns cover these meetings themselves. But sometimes there are meetings they don't really want covered, and they don't get covered. Mm-hmm. But so the library exists as that entity that confers that neutrality in our coverage. And I just think that's really important. Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially with, everything that's been going on lately. One of the things I wanted to point out that I learned when I was doing the tour is that if you can't sit through 30, 40 hours a week of the government meetings, you also have a weekly show called Cat Weekly. Cats Weekly? Cats Week. That's what it is. Sorry. That is sort of
just a recap.
Yeah. Can you explain what that show is?
It's a cool little show. We started doing that in 2009. It's a cooperative venture with community radio WFHB, and we basically we cover all of these meetings. Then we send the files to them, And since they had a news operation already, and then we figured they could, this is a nice way to kind of glean more local news for their news operation. And so then they review the meetings, and then they write us scripts, and then we produce the television show. And you can, if you don't happen to catch it on one of the 4 playback channels, you can go to the CATS website, which is catstv.net. Catstv.net, and it should pop up as one of the first things you'll run across. And it's usually only about like 20 minutes long, and we drop in some public service announcements for library services and things like that. Typically, it's sort of the big things that happen in government that week, but it also serves as kind of a promotional service for us as well. It's sort of saying, hey, look at everything we're covering here.
Right.
And it's all done really, really inexpensively. We do. We have what's called a memorandum of understanding with WFHB, where we provide them some money that gives them a part-time news assistant there. And so it's also a way to take the franchise fees I mentioned earlier and sort of maximize the effect that has in town for creating local news.
Wonderful.
Media.
I love that idea of kind of co-oping with other news organizations or media organizations in town to expand your reach. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched last week's episode of Cats Week. And like it started off with a synopsis of there was a budget meeting for, I say I'm really bad with county departments. I'm going to look like I'm completely out of tune, and I probably am. But it was about elections. And knowing that 2020 with the presidential election and other offices that are up for election is going to be a huge year. So it was a kind of an interesting meeting about the elections and like, okay, there are going to be some increased funds. How are you going to use those? And I learned something about that they're going to change the ballot format. And even just watching a few minutes, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. It kind of made me like, oh, maybe I want to go back and actually watch, the meeting.
The full meeting.
Yeah, but it gave you that heads up, which I think, people always complain that we don't have great news sources in Bloomington. On Facebook, that's where people complain.
Well, I feel like, too, just like with anything else, you have to know what is available in your own community, just to say that, there's not enough out there, or it's only one-sided, or, they're not really showing, the kind of, I don't know. I just think people need to figure out where they live.
Yeah.
And know what resources are available.
And what legitimate resources. So that's one thing, is that so many people are going towards Facebook and Instagram for their news, when most of that's just rumors and gossip. It's really not news. And so to be able to watch these government meetings, and it is what it is. There's no filter. There's, nobody filtering it through like, this is what I'm interpreting this as. It is what it is. And you can kind of put it through your own filter and interpret it. And I think that's really important. So I would encourage everyone to find that, the weekly show, Cats Week, and pay attention to that, because I think that's a good solid source of what's going on in your community.
Yeah, because when you're flipping through the channels and you do see some of those meetings that are occurring, or you're watching the rerun of it, sometimes they appear to be lengthy, and it's like, okay, but I like the idea of having a recap, like you mentioned, and if it's something that you want to know more about, then you can go back and watch the full meeting.
Absolutely. So since a lot of people are moving away from cable, and I know, I'm seeing this working with people all the time when I show them houses. They don't really care if the cable ready or not, because, I just do Hulu and Netflix. So I'm dedicating this show to our friend Brittany, who says she's going to come over and draw me pictures on how to use Hulu and Netflix, because I have no idea. I can't even change a channel at my house. But how is that changing your models? Or how has that changed over time? And do you see CATS changing going forward?
It's a really good question. It might be the question when it comes to public educational governmental access, because, as for instance, in, I think it was 2017, Comcast, I think it's the largest cable provider, they lost 175,000 of their customers to cord cutters. In 2018, I think it was 390,000.
Wow.
So, these are big numbers.
Yeah.
That being said, cable profits for Comcast were up in 2018 11.1%. So cable is doing very well, but there are more and more cord cutters. And we're seeing that kind of decrease with both the city and county. In 2018, the city's franchise fees were down about 6%. The counties were down, I think, like 3.4%, something like that. So there is this steady trend. That being said, collectively, in terms of the money that comes in from the city, the county, the town of Ellettsville, in terms of external revenue, and this may be a little more than you want to hear, but it's a little bit north of $700,000 a year that then funds the network of CATs. Coming into town, those franchise fees total over $1.5 million.
Okay.
And currently, the city and county use these monies. The city, for instance, funds a good deal of its IT department, and the county, funds its telephones and computers and things like that. It kind of just goes into the general fund. So we're going to see this trend continuing of cord cutters, and so we'll probably next year the city will be down 6%, the county will be down probably 4%. And my guess is what we'll mean is that rather than relying on the cable franchise money to fund these other city and county related services, I would add, before even finishing my sentence, that is their choice to do. But because CATS seems so well supported in town, and these funds by law seem to probably have the kind of trying to think what to say here, the kind of the greatest foundation in terms of where the money is coming from and what the intended use.
Sure, intended use, I think is
but it's not. I mean, that goes back to the Cable Act of 1972, and there's been half a dozen other iterations, and the intent has changed. But so the original intent is that it should be used for public access. It's a long way of saying, which is how I say everything, that I think we will be good for probably like another 10 years.
Okay.
And then there may have to be some other kind of funding model that comes from perhaps as yet some unknown technology that we all must have in 10 years.
Sure. You've started offering more things online, right?
Yeah.
So, but not everything?
Not everything. No, we don't do public access online for a variety of reasons. Some of which, because there are the due diligence of local producers with respect to intellectual property and use of music. Like, let's say if they would do like add some kind of music that somebody else owns, but they'll cut to it, then that's a synchronization right thing. Then if we would put that on the internet, then the copyright holder could then point to us rather than to that independent producer.
Gotcha. So, but one of the interesting things that I learned doing the tour is that people can bring you shows. They can make shows, and that's one of the ways that, as I understood it from Adam, who was giving us the tour, that you all really want to encourage the community, is if you want to, because everybody's got access now to cameras and editing tools, and, and they may not be perfect and fancy, but they're there. And so if they want to bring something to you to put on the air, that you would do that or consider doing that.
Yeah, we would. It's whether it's an individual show or a series, not unlike the J&B on the Rock show we talked about earlier. It's there and it's free. The only catch is it can't be commercial.
It can't be marketing, right?
Offering a thing of value.
Right. So I was sort of giving the example of Wes, who is our friend Wes, who engineers the show. Hi, Wes.
Hey, Wes.
And he's worked for CATS for a long time as well. That he once shot some video of a homebuyer seminar that I did. And it wasn't really marketing me. It was just providing education on how to buy a home and what you need to know. So something like that potentially could, I'm not saying we're going to do that. I'm just saying something like that could go if it was, educational. And anybody in town can, if your church has a program or a luncheon, or one of the other ones I was involved with for a long time, Bloomington Restorations, and they have an annual meeting that they do that's always recorded and broadcast as well. So that's, I think, an interesting opportunity for people out there.
Yeah, we went, the first time I ever saw the facilities was part of a Cub Scout tour. And
I like those tours.
Back in, and then I'm going way back.
When Jonathan was?
Yeah, when Jonathan was in Cub Scouts. I was the den leader from his initial, first grade up into like first year Weeblos or whatever. I've kind of retired that hat. But one of our field trips that I planned was at the library, and I didn't even realize, and this was probably, 15 years ago or so. I'm sure it's completely different now, but I didn't realize that all of that was even in the library, that the space was there, the equipment and all of that behind the scenes. I know they've, like I said, the rest of the library has had major updates and changes. So Jonathan's been recording music at the library. So I'm sure that the cats
there's that section, and then behind that is where the cats is. I want to talk, before we run out of time, about this idea of free speech, because I really see cats as being, one of the pillars in our community to uphold that. And that seems to be a question that's coming up a lot these days. And I don't want to get political at all, but talk a little bit about your perspective on free speech and how public access plays into that.
Let's see. That's a
broad question.
It's a broad question.
Excellent. I'm good at that.
It's a good question. It's just hard. I mean, it sort of encompasses the past 34 years of my life. So I'll try to really condense it, though. When I started in '85, it was not. I mean, basically, if the library director at the time didn't find a show interesting or funny, they didn't put it on, which I, much as I love the then library director, I worked to change that. And there was a particular program, I think we ran it was probably in '87, and it was given to us by the Humane Association. It was called Hidden Crimes, and it was about basically experiments done on animals.
Oh.
And so we had been covering. I was frustrated when I worked at Channel 4 that we would every once a month they'd bring like one animal from the animal shelter. And I wanted to go more often. They said, "Well, we can't afford that." So when I started working at Cats, just call it Cats for now.
Yep.
That's one of the things I really wanted to do: show all the animals in the animal shelter and to get them homes, because at that point they did.
Yeah,
they had the youth.
Not good things happened.
Yeah. So anyway, the Humane Association gave us this tape, and it was basically against animal experimentation. And then there was this whole big explosion that was all over the front page because we ran this show.
And it was a little shocking and a little.
It was very shocking. It was not the sort of thing you could show on commercial television, but because again of the kind of constitutional breadth that's conferred by cable television, we were able to put that on. And then July 5th of 1988, the library board established Cats as a dedicated constitutional forum. So then it was official. If the First Amendment said that this was protected speech, then it can run without discussion on our channel. So of course the J&B folks tested that as far as anybody.
If you want to know, you can read the Wikipedia entry, because it tells you some of the things that I'm not going to repeat it here because we're not a family show, but but it's shocking. In my opinion.
Well, and just briefly on that, they would give me their tapes on Thursday afternoon, the same ones that would be running that night, and I would look at it because I knew there was every week there was something. And again, I can't even talk about some of it because some of it
really
we did pull back on a couple of shows, much to their quite overt chagrin. But had we not, I don't think I would be having this conversation now, because they would have closed us down.
Yeah,
because some of what they were trying to have us present on television would have been found to be obscene.
And I think they were doing it to push the envelope, right? I mean, they weren't doing it because they were, I don't want to sound like my mom, but getting their jollies off it or anything. They were doing it because their purpose out there was to see how far they could push the envelope and to, make people think critically about what was out there. And,
Okay, here's one very short story that I've never disclosed before.
Okay. Ooh,
but this
news.
This will not be of like a sexual nature, which most of their really kind of marginal stuff was. When I say marginal, I mean just constitutionally marginal.
Yeah.
They had decided to show people how to build a bomb out of things in your home.
Oh.
And I knew from another access center that some other folks had done this, and a kid had blown off his hands, and the access producers were then sued, and I think actually went to jail.
Oh my gosh!
So I said, how about this? If you will misidentify one of the salient ingredients in the bomb, we'll still let this thing run. And so I made a suggestion to them about, what they could misidentify. And so we ran that show. People were still very upset that they were showing how to make a bomb, but the bomb that they were describing would never have worked. And there's actually a book that was it made a lot of history in library circles called the Anarchist Cookbook that showed how to do a lot of these sorts of things. And so they were following that tradition, but this had never really been done here locally on television. Anyway,
were they open to that when you suggested that, or did they push back and then you said it's this or it's nothing?
They would always push back unless I said you're going to jail.
And then they said, then I've come close before.
Yeah. I mean, I like those guys. I like, they're intelligent, they're funny, but man, Thursdays were tough.
Wow. Interesting. So I have to ask then, is there a place to watch those episodes or?
We actually you can request those. I imagine they are on the ROX site, rox.com. They're probably all on that site. I've not been there for a while. But you can request the shows, and I'm not even sure. We might even be running those still like late at night on weekdays.
I feel like I've seen them recently or saw something recently. I don't know.
Is it still the same like video quality from back then, or have they been like
anything similar?
It's gotten a lot better.
Okay.
I mean, they actually, and again, their production values were very good, and their pacing was very good, and they were, as very difficult as it was for me to be kind of the so-called grown-up in the room. They did, for the time they were doing the show, they did really innovative work that was then emulated by a lot of other producers.
Yeah, which is crazy. All of that. Yeah. I think it had ripples. What they did.
They did, definitely.
They had ripples all over the country. And that's kind of cool to think that started here with a naked guy, basically, is how that started. So there you go. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Really interesting discussion. And I want to encourage people to follow those channels and also find out, there's a lot of services that things, if you want something on, if you want a copy of something, if you want to go into the vault or, try and find something, a program in the past, you can do that. Public service announcements, all kinds of things that, you all work with the community to put out there.
Yeah, we have our collection of old bassoon shows, too, that maybe you'd like.
I would love some bassoon shows. Awesome. Thank you so much, and we will be back with another episode. You are at home in Bloomington. Got a show idea? I'd love to hear it. And be sure to contact me for all your real estate needs and questions, too. You can email me at deb@realrealestatetoday.com. And follow me on Facebook at Deb Tomorrow Realtor. To contact Karen Rastel for all your mortgage needs, call 812-606-7653 or log on to ruoff.com and go to the Bloomington Center. Thanks to all the Bloomington people who make production of At Home in Bloomington possible. Special thanks to superstar producer Rachel G. Gregorio, digital guru Cynthia Hogan at Monster Digital Marketing for website design and hosting, and video genius Wes Lasher in the production house for engineering the show.